So this is it, the valley. Nice. I've been getting food yesterday, and cat food, and a raincoat, like pants, rain pants. What else? Socks, something, a broom, a small broom, and something to pick up the dirt after I've gathered it together with a broom. That one is called Schüffeli and Basili in Switzerland. So I don't really know what it's called. So yeah, they're chopping wood. You hear it. And otherwise, it's been a real calm day. And by the way, I logged out. I just shut down my computer now. You know, Microsoft isn't updating the system anymore. The virus protections still get downloaded. I need to do it sometimes manually. But there is no danger now. Whenever I turn on the computer after having been somewhere, there is no problem. I can start watching something or listening to stuff right away. So the woman I visited went to visit a monk, but beside the monastery there is a second-hand shop. So I tried to get some sweaters, woolen ones. I just bought a jacket because of others stuff she didn't have. So maybe for half an hour we talked about God. So she let Jesus into her life, and she suggested I should listen to some tele-evangelist, which I didn't like him. He was too much liking the, experience of being the talker and everyone sitting there listening. And he wasn't really giving me anything that I could apply in my life. And then the other one, a Caroline Leaf, a neuroscientist that also says, in the scriptures it says this and that, and therefore we can adapt that saying, and it must be true, and now let's figure out what it means also in science, in brain science. So to me, when someone says, listen, the scriptures, they're absolutely holy, everything is in there. These people are crazy. How can a man-written book be holy and having all the truth in it when history shows that the elite, having the money, always temper the truth so that you don't really get it? They either don't let you have it, or they just, punish you when you get it. Whatever, the witches, they haven't been burnt as I look at it, but they've been, like the whole population seems to have been threatened to be in any kind knowledge. So that if you have a kind of health issue, there is just praying. So the doctors that were around are allowed to help you, but otherwise it was not the common folk that could do anything. If somebody hears or sees you doing stuff, then they go and say, no, so that one was the danger. But then the other thing, the scientists that in the early, 1600s and early, years of scientism, they were 1600 something, 15 something, 16, I don't know. They weren't allowed to actually exist, so they needed to apply a language that wouldn't give them away. So that's where this John Deere comes into play. So he now is mistaken. When you look him up on Wikipedia, you see a black and white kind of drawing, and then his symbols and stuff. You can't really say this means that and stuff. It's just so nebulous, like nebula. It doesn't give any concrete can't make sense out of it. But that one seems to have been a secret language for a while between people that wanted to deal with, health issues. And that were wanting to talk about scientific stuff, like what's the weather doing to our crop, and scientifically the farmers were just doing plowing and this and that, but the science wasn't allowed, so the church wasn't allowing any science. That's where this thing about Galileo Galilei comes from. So when he said, that we are turning around the sun. Well, the church said so, and he said the opposite. Then he was like, how would he know? Oh well, he had a telescope, he did scientific work. So I think he was hung, or threatened to be hung. So he had to revoke what he was saying about the middle of the universe not being the earth but the sun. Well, this language, these strange symbols seem to come from that now we have for Earth and the other planets and the sun and so that John Deere got picked up later on by this spiritism is what it was in the beginning. Spirituality. So the elite figured, okay, we can't always have people following Jesus, that leader. We need to have some variety so that we can juggle people back and forth from one place to the other and divide the people, and by that conquer the field. Because when you rule on both sides of these divisions, then you decide what the outcome is gonna be. So what they did was, with the Fox sisters, so-called, they had these seances. So that was like, okay, people sitting it's this channeling thing. Like there's a few videos up on YouTube where people kind of still do it, like from the 80s, and even now printing books with the words that they seem to have seen or heard in their mind, which aren't their words, but they say they channeled it. So there was a kind of transmission from the angels or God or any other holy, voice or whatever. They say, this is entity, this and that now talking. And so they are the channel. Oh God. So that was the beginning of so-called esotericism. Esoterics as we have it nowadays, with tarot and the runes and doing astrology, whereas, or whatever. When we know that if humans actually have anything in front of them, they try to make sense of it. So if you get told, well, your astrological sign is this and that, and these other signs are like this and that, and then you go kind of comparing, and you kind of, when you think it makes sense to do this astrological stuff, the sun-based stuff, where you go like, okay, this sign is there, this one is there, that one makes no sense. It makes sense to look what the moon does, because astrological stuff for humans doesn't work, because we want to make sense of everything. So what we hear makes us thinking, and then we create a picture. So it's like, oh yeah, we can get wiser, knowing us better, by kind of being told, you are a rebellious character, very good pioneer. Yeah, well then, I know a lot of people born in December that aren't pioneers and that haven't got that fiery, energetic, stuff in them. So that's not good. But what is good is the moon calendar, because the moon, as we know, is tearing up the Earth's water, which is the oceans, a meter and more, the tides, and it does it like every 3 hours. It goes back and forth by then. So it's like, because the Earth is turning, the moon turns exactly with the Earth, we kind of have like rotating, the Earth is rotating and the moon is bound to us. So we have a bulge because we turn, we rotate around ourselves. We have bulges that get closer to the moon and are more far away. So that one can tear up the sea, as we see